Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. As you can see today, we are on the Twitter account of TSM Reginald. He is the owner for TSM, and he recently has had a lot of opinions, comments, and stuff about the whole import situation in the LCS, but also all across the world. And I think that is a big thing to note here in this situation. I'm getting a lot of comments like, "Oh, no LEC stories. Oh, can we talk about the LEC? Blah 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 blah." And yes, I do agree, and I wish there was more LEC stories to talk about. You know, when Magic Felix had his stuff going on, when Crown had his stuff going on, I am covering both sides. But the import thing is absolutely an LCS and LEC story. It's LCS teams, it's LCS owners, but this would be changes affecting the entire League of Legends landscape. This would not just be an LCS change. This would also, the rule would change in the LEC, it would change in the LPL, it would change in the LCK, but also one big thing they're trying to do by changing the import rule is take away a lot of the young developing talent in the LEC and spend money, throw money at it, and bring them over to the LCS. You know, the LEC has been successful for so long with less money than the LCS by having a ton of cheap, really, really good players constantly coming up through the pipeline, constantly being developed. And if the LCS is able to start taking some of that away, either the whole overall level of the LEC is going to drop, or they're going to have to start paying more money, which might be unsustainable in the long term. So, I mean, the LCS is trying to level themselves up at the expense of other leagues for sure. So even if you are an LEC fan, you should definitely care about this stuff. But before we get into all that, I just want to mention real quick, if you guys have not already, definitely smash the like button. I would appreciate it so much. It really helps me out the YouTube algorithm. One of the best and easiest ways to help support my channel and my content, if that's something that you're interested in doing. Also, subscribe to stay updated on my latest content so you don't miss out on any of the videos we got coming out in the future. With that being said, today we're going to be talking about Regi, who posted this article, or like post, just really long post, talking about my thoughts on the LCS. And we knew this was coming. He said the other day that he will post something longer to explain his thoughts about the whole situation, and this is what that is. And I think in some ways it's a good statement. There are definitely some good things in here, but in some ways it is a bad statement as well. I think there's some things that he purposely left off. There's some things that I think he's maybe not telling the whole truth about, or you know, kind of dancing around a little bit. So we'll get into that, give my thoughts and opinions on everything kind of as we go, and hopefully be getting you know, your guys' thoughts and opinions as well as always. So here we go. TSM Regi, my thoughts on the LCS. He said, "First, I wanted to say I went overboard with my comments towards Vulcan. Since then, he apologized. That's great. They had a good conversation, made it clear it wasn't taken personally. That stuff we already knew about. You know, everyone has a different thought and opinion on that, whatever. The thoughts I truly wanted to express were that there are problems with the LCS, and there will be a natural progression to league minimum salaries for players. Yeah, we already know that. I don't really care about this part too much." He talks about how he grew up in a low-income household. Some, you know, I don't know, maybe he should be a little bit more considerate towards people going through stuff like that. But he says moving forward, he wants to explain himself in a more clear and professional way when talking about serious topics, especially in public forum. You know, I think that's great. Again, it's great to say. Hopefully he actually does that. Who knows? It's remained to be seen. Your guess is as good as anybody else's. I know people don't really believe that because he's had a long track record of being kind of immature and foolish and selfish and just kind of having weird statements and stuff. But you know, relatively in the grand scheme of things, especially being a big business owner, he is relatively young. People can level up. People can evolve. Hopefully he does, but, you know, who knows? Next up, he says, "This is a long post. I'm hoping you will read it to the end because it explains a lot of context. There are a lot of nuances to operating an esports team, and I truly want to start a thoughtful and meaningful conversation around the LCS." And that's awesome because, yes, at the end of the day, the LCS owners are some of the guys who know the absolute most about, you know, the gameplay side, but the business side, and just everything that's going on. You know, a lot of us know a lot as well, but there's no way for, like, me or Travis or other people in the scene to know everything, to have the whole story. We can give our thoughts and opinions and speculate on some stuff, but at the end of the day, these are some of the only people who are going to know the exact specifics and the exact stuff that is going on, so this should be really good to hear. He says, "As a former player and current owner, he desperately wants to be competitive internationally," and that's great. Everybody wants to do that. You know, LCS fans want to be competitive internationally as well. That's fine. His dream is for an LCS team to win Worlds, and he runs TSM with that goal every year. He's frustrated to see organizations, players, and fans putting in so much energy and passion to see people come up short. If you take a look at the past 5 years, LCS has not been competitive, despite the fact that LCS invests so much, if not more, in terms of player salaries and infrastructure compared to most other regions. Correct, absolutely correct. And this little thing here is very memeable, where you see that the LCS has made 3 quarterfinals in the last 5 years. They've made 1 semifinals, no finals, and they have no championships, compared to the LEC, LPL, and LCK, which have, you know, similar quarterfinals, similar semifinals. similar-ish finals, and then obviously the LEC hasn't been able to get a title yet, but they're right there with the LPL and LCK, despite a lot of these same issues. And the LEC spends far, far less money. But also, at the same time, the LEC has far, far less imports. The LEC has far better coaching and infrastructure, not even infrastructure, but development, like minor leagues and stuff like that. The LEC does a lot right. All of Europe does a lot of things right. It is not as simple as imports. And I think that's something that a lot of people are saying throughout this whole conversation and discussion. He says, right now it is important to acknowledge that the LCS as a region has issues. 100% agree. Definitely does. We are not competitive with other major regions. This is not a problem that we can solve alone, and we'll need Riot, the teams, and the community to understand the core problems and work together. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think it is Riot's fault that the LCS sucks. I don't think it's Riot's responsibility that the LCS has some of these issues. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the organizations, to the owners, to the decisions that they have made. They have over time made a ton of short-sighted decisions. They have, foregone player development for the most part to throw out massive, massive salaries, unsustainably massive salaries at both imports and resident players, and not really led to any development. The LCS has been stale. We have not seen player turnover like we have in all the other leagues. LPL, LCK, LEC have insane player turnover. The LCS stagnated for so long, and that hurt long-term development. They've inflated player salaries to a point that's unsustainable, and they can't continue to afford to keep paying, which is why this whole situation is coming up right now after an offseason where we just saw the amount of money that Sword Art and Perks got. The salaries can't keep going up. The LCS organizations cannot afford this stuff anymore. So I think that was a weird point. I do not think it is I don't think we need Riot. I don't think we need the community to understand the core problems and work together. This is an LCS organization problem. This is an LCS owner problem. This is an LCS management problem. So I don't necessarily agree with that. He said, the most important problem we see is the player base size and talent we can draw from. Player base is LPL 70 million, who knows what the real number is. LCK 2.8, EU 2.9, and LCS 1.0. So obviously LEC and LCK are working with about triple. LPL's working with just exponentially insane amount of players. So if this was, obviously this is a big thing. The less players you have, the harder it's going to be to get those top tier talent. The less competitive your ladder is going to be. It's just going to be harder to find those top tier players. Fine. But also, conventional wisdom would then tell you, why is the LPL not by far the most dominant region? Why are Chinese players not by far and away better than the LCK and LEC? If you're saying this is the most important problem, then LCK shouldn't be able to compete with China. LEC shouldn't be able to compete with China. This wouldn't even make sense. This is a piece of the puzzle for sure. I wouldn't even say it's the biggest piece. I wouldn't say it's the main piece. Also, the LCS now has Oceania, the OPL in their league, which Regi conveniently leaves out of this. That would bump up the LCS player base. I'm not sure by how many. I didn't look it up, but it's some amount of hundreds of thousands, and would at least close the gap between the LEC. I think at the least it would make it go from a third to maybe a half, and still kind of paint a clearer picture and a more realistic and accurate picture that Regi is conveniently leaving off of his post, and he knows that. This data means that other regions have significantly more players with the potential and aspirations to go pro. Sure, again, I don't know why he's ignoring the differences between the LCK and the LPL and the LEC and the LPL. But whatever. In other words, a larger player base results in a greater number of potential professional level talent. That's true. This effect, to an extent, this effect is further compounded by the fact that a large player base requires a talented player to be better than so many more players to reach rank of challenger. If you look at the top 100 to 200 players in each region, the average level of top players in North America is lower. That's subjective. Yeah, to an extent, probably. And again, it could have something to do with the player base. It could have something to do with the culture here. It could have something to do with the ping issues. It could have something to do with, a lot of different things. I wouldn't say it just comes down to the amount of players. With regard to the point that NA hasn't invested in talent, the notion is false. Again, that is subjective. He cannot just say it's not true or false. It's not a fact either way. LCS teams invest just as much in talent development as a team from other major regions. After an embarrassing performance at Worlds last year, TSM decided to double our investment for 2021. Other teams at LCS have similarly increased their investment. We are not giving up hope. This year alone, TSM will be investing $8 million on not only players' salaries, coaches, facilities, etc. That puts us in top 10% of spend for all regions. And a really important point that a lot of people are talking about on Twitter right now is Regi at this point doesn't talk about what he's doing with the money. He just talks about that they're spending money. And again, LCS we know has some of the biggest pockets in the world. Like, yes, China has bigger and LPL spends more, but LCS is probably second in terms of regions in the world in terms of spending money on salaries, facilities, all that stuff. No one is arguing that the LCS or TSM or anyone isn't spending money. We're arguing that you're spending the money weirdly, incorrectly, giving that money to people who have no business being in management, being in coaching, being in analysis of players and teams. And that overall, you can blame the players, but maybe you should look in the mirror and blame yourself a little bit. That you should blame your management. That you should blame your staff a little bit. That you should blame your coaching. That you should blame your scouts and stuff like that. Because yes, TSM has done some good things in terms of player development, and so have some of the other NA orgs. But in the end, everyone has kind of fallen short as well. TSM had Tactical, never gave him a chance. They had Johnson, never gave him a chance. They had Cat Evolved, never gave him a chance. They had Treats, and he's now gone over to Europe, and he's having an awesome split. You know, the LCS has had talent in front of them. Yes, Treats is an import, but again, you know, they had talent there, and they chose to go spend bigger money somewhere else, or they chose to make different decisions. And it has been so hard for young players in the in like academy and amateur and collegiate to even get to the LCS, even when they are, you know, at worst equivalent to the players that are in the LCS. If you look at the history of the LCS, it is the same washed up old bad players getting opportunities over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, you know the memes of some of the old players and stuff like Kiwi Kid coming back to LCS all the time. Even guys like Darshan, you know, maybe getting one too many opportunities, and no hate against any of those guys, you know, whatever. But in other regions like Europe, I mean, you see young players getting opportunities all the time. And if you want to develop talent, you have to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. There's no sport, activity, anything in the world where development or scouting or anything is so good that you can pick out a couple of players or a couple of people and that they're always going to rise to the cream of the crop. You know, it is a very unsolved science because there's so many variables at play. You have to give a ton of people chances. You have to be willing to miss on a prospect and suck for a year or two, and then give some more people some chances and build towards the future. And yes, TSM has been great. They gave Speak an opportunity. You know, that's paid off. But historically, they have not given their young players opportunities. It has been very, very hard for young players to break into the LCS. Despite the LCS being the weakest major region, it's also the hardest for a young player to get an opportunity or time in the region. And that's crazy. And that is something that the LCS owners are completely ignoring. Look at the LEC right now. They were so good last year, and look at how many new faces there are. There's so many new faces that guys like Nemesis and Crownshot couldn't even get another opportunity when they were definitely good enough to be, but some teams still found it worth it to go young and try it out. And yes, some of those mid laners and some of those players and some of those AD carries have sucked. They've just flat out been bad, but it was still worth the risk. It was still a good decision overall. You know, some of these teams are saying that it was a good decision for them. And they're going to do it again next year, and they're going to try again until they get it right, because there are in the LEC, in Europe, and in North America, there are young players hungry for an opportunity who want to make it up to the big leagues, who want to be able to prove themselves. But the more years that they go without an opportunity, not only is that creating a backlog of talent where those players are still going to be at the top, and the next generation will maybe pass them up a little bit, but it's just going to, the line's going to get longer and longer. You're also going to start discouraging them. If they think they're good enough for an opportunity in academy or something, and it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they're still continually getting passed up and passed up and passed up, despite, knowing that they're just as good as some of those players, if not better than some of them, which we've seen historically, that, people have made the wrong personnel decisions. That's going to be very, very discouraging for them, and discouraging for the players behind them, and discouraging for the next generation of young North American talent. And that, in my opinion, is one of the biggest issues going on right now. So yes, Regi, you spend money, but what are you doing with that money? Is it the best decisions? Is it even smart decisions? That is your opinion against mine and everyone else's, and you just don't really talk about it at all. You completely gloss over that point. Other regions have an ocean of talent and natural local interest where businesses beneath pro teams are built as training grounds to develop players with solid viewership. For example, the LFL recently hit peak viewership of 190K and eclipses NA Academy, and that's only one regional league among many in Europe, whereas in NA you have the same players qualifying for scouting grounds multiple years in a row. Again, that is happening because you are not giving those players opportunities, and the academy and amateur infrastructure does not have the same level of grassroots support. That is true to an extent. Obviously, Europe is very, very different than the United States. But again, what are you doing with these opportunities? What are you doing with this stuff? At the end of the day, viewership shouldn't really matter for something like Academy too much. But it should be a development league. Like the NBA has the G League and baseball has the minor leagues. Those things don't get great viewers. And they don't do it for viewership. They do it to build up the talent, to be, to gain viewership in the LCS in the future. And that's what the LCS has seen. They continually are not giving these players opportunities. They're continually importing more. And we can scroll back up to that graph that shows we have not had international results despite importing more and more and more and more and more. And viewership in the LCS is going down year over year. He does talk about the ping for pro players. This is obviously a big point. It does create different muscle memory. It doesn't translate well to land. Yes, that is absolutely a huge thing. And yes, that would not be fixed by importing more players. So, some of these problems are not easy to solve, and I definitely agree. The LCS is in a weird position. It is in a tough position, but like I said, yes, it is very, very much more complicated than just importing. And even if you import more players, they're still going to be playing on 60 ping. Just like Vulcan said, if you import the Damwon gaming team, make them play on 60 ping for a year, are they going to be the best team in the world? Maybe, maybe not. They'll be one of the best. They'll still be obviously very insanely talented. They're naturally gifted, and they're very, very well practiced, versed. But if you come to NA, scrim against NA teams for a year, play on 60 ping, if you have an NA coaching staff, and analysts and all that, good luck. Good luck to them. Teams are currently investing at a major loss because we believe in Riot and want to make our mark on the global stage and proves that the LCS is still a premier league for our fans. That's great. I would say, why are you operating at a major loss? That is because the LCS has been inflating salaries year over year over year. And again, they're getting to an unsustainable point, and Regi is not taking any blame for that. He is just as fault as a lot of these other owners and stuff. Obviously, TL and Cloud9 have played big parts in that, and some of these other organizations as well. They have thrown more and more money at this without fixing any of the other issues, and they're paying the price for that. And to an extent, I don't feel bad. They have caused a lot of this themselves. When the LCS is at its greatest, CLG versus TSM used to peak at 600 concurrents. Where is it now? If the LCS teams can't perform internationally, I believe that fan will lose interest over time. Kinda. Part of it is that the LCS broadcast has gotten worse over time, and there's more options. At one point, the LCS was the biggest and best thing, not because we had the best talent. That was never the case. LCS has never been successful internationally, and yes, we still had 600K viewers at one point, and why was that? We had interesting players, compelling storylines, a great broadcast, so many different things at play, and the League of Legends was very, very popular in North America, and maybe it's not as popular anymore. Maybe it's getting, on the decline a little bit, or peaking off. But that is a very, very interesting point that, NA viewership has never had anything to do with international success. So I think that is a very, very strange point. I don't know. I don't get that. So this offseason alone, you can see that there are 4 or 5 orgs that are investing heavily in creating competitive rosters. He's talking about some teams trying to save money and stuff. He talks about how there's a concern with any change to the rule that there will be less representation of NA talent in the LCS. It will have an adverse effect on viewership. I can't talk. He doesn't believe this to be the case. First, elite local talent like Spica, Tactical, Blabber, and Vulcan, and new up-and-coming talent will still find their way into the LCS as long as their skills comparable to the global counterparts. I think that's debatable. We'll see. Again, if you make it harder for players to come to the LCS, some people are going to think that trying to make it to the LCS is not worth the risk. In the United States, you have a million different options. You have so many different things you can do with your time, free time, so many different risks you could take. If you continue to make it harder, would Spica, Tactical, Blabber, and Vulcan all necessarily make it to the LCS? We hope, but there's definitely worlds where they don't as well. And then that's not even to mention the Spikas, Tactical, Blabbers, and Vulcans that we've never even heard of because they've never gotten a chance. They've never gotten the opportunity. And that's just the fact of the matter. He says our fans have been incredibly accepting of players like Bjergsen, Santorin, Jensen, Impact, all these guys. And yes, they definitely have. And again, I think part of that is to do with the import rules right now where we get years and years and years to, get to know these players. And some of these are a stretch. Has Lustboy increased viewership in the LCS at all? I don't think so. Sven Skaren's been great. Perks, Core JJ have been great. Impact, Jensen, Santorin. Has Santorin increased viewership in the LCS at all? I don't know. His brand's not that strong. I doubt it. Some of these are reaches. Some of these are, Bjergsen, yes, has for sure impacted viewership. Perks, yes, 100%. Core JJ, 100%. Jensen, probably. Impact, probably. Santorin, Lustboy, I don't think so, but whatever. We believe that increasing global competitive strength is more important than indexing solely on local representation for the growth and longevity of the LCS. Again, I agree with that to an extent, but I also do not. It's not like we are only an LCS organization right now. It's not like we're only North American players right now. I believe 25 of the 50 players in the LCS are imports, and that is a global competitive environment, almost by definition. But whatever. So far, this issue has been discussed without nuance in the public. I believe that the import rule discussion has been overblown. The teams, including myself, have communicated poorly. Yes, the discussion has been overblown a lot due to the fact that, yes, you and Jack have been saying some stupid things. I would agree. There are solutions and approaches that we can work together to take to resolve these issues. I do think there's a middle ground where we can loosen up the number of players that can be imported to the amount of time that it takes for them to become residents. Over the last few years, TSM has invested in talent development through academy and amateur programs. Again, I would disagree, of which a lot of now are playing the LCS and LEC. We've tried to enhance every other aspect of performance. I mean, yeah, for sure, they're doing some good things, but is it too little, too late is a question. This stuff should have been happening 5-6 years ago, not right now. Even when implementing best practices from other regions and investing into talent development, the current problem that the LCS faces with our player base and ping issues are too much to be viable internationally. I disagree, but I still think he's not talking about a lot of different things. I wish in this article he would have talked more about what they're doing in terms of talent development. And talent development goes deeper than even just young NA players. It goes to your LCS level players as well. We don't necessarily see players getting better year over year in the LCS and staying competitive with some of these other regions and stuff. I think that is a huge part. I think the coaching staff, I think the management and things in the LCS are some of the worst in the entire world, honestly. And I think that is a huge part to blame with a lot of these issues. For those who are in favor of maintaining the current rules or even changing them, I'm open to thoughts on how to tackle these problems in order to create a more competitive league in the global ecosystem. Now, again, I would disagree with some of that because his statements and stuff have clearly shown that he is maybe not necessarily open to some of that discussion, but hopefully, him and the other owners can be open to that going forward. But yeah, wanting to hear more about how he's spending money on the talent development stuff, because I think that's a huge part of all this, but also wanting to hear more about the financials overall. Like, yes, he says a lot of teams are operating at a loss right now, but why is that? Is it because you guys have been inflating salaries? How has money been impacted by sponsorships and viewerships and all those things? Like, are your money going up or down in those ways? Or are you just losing money because you're simply spending too much on players that don't deserve it and players that you're not seeing a return on your investment on? And also, would getting better international results make you more money? This is an entertainment business, isn't it? They're not competing for prize pools and stuff. They're competing for fans, and like I said, viewership is down year over year, and it was higher way back when, and international results were not necessarily higher back then either. But that's pretty much over this video today, guys. Just going over TSM Reginald's statement. It was a long one, but it had a lot of good stuff in here, and it was something that I definitely wanted to cover, and hopefully you guys, learn some stuff from it, or maybe just kind of evolve this conversation a little bit. I think that would be great. Definitely drop a like if you did enjoy it. I would appreciate it so much. Really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about this whole situation? What did you like about Regi's statement? What did you not like? What are your thoughts and opinions after reading it? Have you changed your mind at all? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe, stay updated on the latest content. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.